The story begins in the middle of the night, the kind of hour when most people are asleep, and the only lights in certain neighborhoods come from porch bulbs and the rotating beams on the roofs of patrol cars. A radio voice calmly announces a domestic disturbance, but any officer with experience knows that phrase can cover some of the most dangerous situations they will ever face. Tonight, the call is in Toledo, Ohio, a medium-sized city that looks quiet at a distance, but carries all the tensions and private dramas of any place where people drink, argue, fall in love, and hurt each other behind closed doors. The dispatcher explains that a woman has locked herself inside a van parked outside her own home. Her boyfriend is outside reportedly with several knives in his possession, and according to what he told the call taker, the situation will get ugly when police arrive. That's enough to put every responding officer on edge. Before they even turn onto the block, cars slide to a stop up, the streetlights turn down, engines rumbling low. Officers don't rush in blindly. They move with that nervous caution that comes from knowing there may be a weapon in play. As they fan out to locate the van and the suspect, they catch sight of a man moving quickly around the property. The instant he sees the patrol cars, he bolts. Commands ring through the night, orders to stop to get on the ground, but he launches into a sprint between houses, cutting through yards, hopping fences, as porch lights flick on and dogs start barking. The camera follows the officer's legs, pumping the beams of flashlights, bouncing across uneven lawns, until they finally manage to get close enough to tackle him. The struggle is brief and chaotic. In moments, the man is in handcuffs, his face flushed with adrenaline and anger as he complains about how he's being treated. He immediately tries to flip the narrative. Instead of admitting to any threat, he insists he is the real victim. He claims that his girlfriend attacked him, that she's the violent one, that he never did anything except try to protect himself. As he sits on the curb, pants askew from the scuffle, he acts offended that anyone would think he could be dangerous. The officers listen but remain skeptical. They have been to enough calls like this to know that people rarely run for no reason. When they ask why he ran if he was innocent, he offers vague answers. He was scared, he didn't want to get blamed, he just panicked. He denies having knives in his hands, denies threatening to hurt anyone, denies chasing her to the van. In the van, the woman tells a very different story. She is clearly shaken, her voice unsteady as she tries to explain how the evening spiraled out of control. She says she had been at her sister-in-law's home earlier and works in a bar, so alcohol and noise are part of her normal environment. But tonight, things took a darker turn. Her boyfriend, she explains, grew jealous and enraged, accusing her of ignoring him and paying too much attention to other people. The argument escalated until he hit her, not just once but multiple times, leaving her with a bump on her head and a hand that she suspects might be broken from trying to fight him off. She admits she struck back, but she describes it as self-defense, an instinctive response to protect herself. What really terrified her, she says, was when he grabbed knives and started making threats. He told her that either she would die or he would, that this night would end in tragedy. She saw him kick her dog, which was like a final line being crossed in her mind. Afraid for both herself and her pet, she retreated into the van and locked the doors, clutching her phone as she dialed 911. To keep him from realizing she was calling the police, she pretended she was speaking to her daughter, disguising her words so he would think it was just a normal family conversation. The dispatcher urged her to stay on the line, but fear made her hang up sooner than she should have, uncertain whether he could hear the tone in her voice. And guess what she was doing? She has been with this man for 4 years, living together and riding out ups and downs. But tonight, she is at the point where she feels something has fundamentally changed. Afraid, bruised, exhausted, as she tells the officers she is done tolerating this kind of abuse. To them, her injuries, her detailed description of the events, and the fact that he ran all point in one direction. The suspect claims that he is the one who was assaulted, ring hollow beside the 911 call, and the fear in her eyes. After weighing both sides, the officers make their decision. They arrest him for domestic violence and for obstructing their work by running from the scene, as he is placed into the back of the patrol car, still insisting that he loves her and that this is one big misunderstanding. The viewer is left with the sense of how many private battles simmer in ordinary streets, only surfacing when someone finally calls for help. From the heavy tension of that standoff, the episode jumps to what might seem at first like comic relief, though it carries its own kind of risk. A different department receives a call about a loose zebra running through traffic. The words sound almost ridiculous coming across the radio, but officers have no time to laugh as they picture what could happen if a panicked animal weighing hundreds of pounds collides with a family car at speed. They respond quickly, scanning the roadway until they spot the striped figure trotting along the edge of the road, ears flicking nervously, hoofs clattering on asphalt. It's a surreal sight. A zebra, an animal associated with safaris and grasslands, weaving between parked cars and front lawns in a typical American neighborhood. The officers decide to create a moving buffer around it, slowing traffic in both directions so that no one crashes trying to avoid the animal. An animal handler called in, specially for the incident, follows in a separate vehicle, with a rope ready, trying to position himself close enough to lasso the zebra without causing it to bolt into someone's yard or into oncoming traffic. The zebra proves smarter and more agile than they expect, darting away from every attempt to catch it, turning sharply, kicking off the pavement with bursts of speed whenever the rope comes near. The handler warns that the animal is very frightened and that fear makes it unpredictable and potentially dangerous. The chase leaves the road and spills into backyards where the zebra tramples gardens, crashes through shrubs, and narrowly avoids smashing fences. Children peer from windows as the black and white blur streaks past plastic playhouses and barbecue grills. The chaos builds until the animal finds itself near a swimming pool. In one panicked move, it plunges into the water. Suddenly, there is this strange, almost dreamlike image of a zebra swimming. Laps its head, bobbing its striped body, cutting through the blue surface, while officers and the handler stand at the edge trying not to slip. As bizarre as it looks, the pool becomes a tool. The animal cannot sprint away while it is in the water, and its energy slowly fades. Working together, the handler and officers reposition the trailer and the rope, using patience instead of brute force. They don't want to choke the zebra or send it into another frenzy, but they need to guide it toward the ramp that leads into the trailer. Step by step, with the small adjustments in tension and careful movements to avoid spooking it, they manage to direct the animal out of the pool across a small stretch of yard and finally into the makeshift stall. The moment the gate closes and the latch clicks, there is a shared exhale. No one was trampled, no car was wrecked, and the animal survived. The scene is humorous in hindsight, but it also highlights a key part of policing that rarely gets attention, dealing with unpredictable hazards that have nothing to do with human suspects and everything to do with keeping a community safe in ways the average person might never think about. The narrative then travels west to Portland, Oregon, where a veteran officer explains a bit about his life. He spent 13 years working in Detroit, a city with a tough reputation and constant violence, before moving to Portland in search of a different environment and a safer place to raise his two daughters. Off-duty, he plays rugby, a sport that lets him channel the stress and aggression of the job into physical contact on the field instead of carrying it home. On duty, he faces a different kind of impact. The radio sends him and his partner to investigate a disturbance, a man reportedly chasing another man, and a woman with a large rock making threats and causing panic in a neighborhood. As they arrive near the scene, they spot a man whose posture and movement match the description. He is agitated, clutching something in his hand, and he seems to be searching for someone. The officers step out and instantly take control, ordering him to drop what he is holding and sit on the curb. Nearby lies a significant rock and a stick, items that could easily cause serious injury if used as weapons. They separate him from the potential weapons and begin to ask questions. His explanation is simple and revealing. He claims that the man he was chasing beat up his brother some time before, and he wanted to confront him to teach him a lesson to make him pay. Revenge is a powerful motivator, but not a legal justification for assault. Officers try to explain this, but the man insists he wasn't really going to hurt anyone, that he was just trying to scare the other guy. The person he chased, however, has a different description. He tells the officers that he was walking down the street when the other man suddenly came after him, yelling accusations and throwing a can in his direction. Fearing for his safety, he ran into a nearby business, a car lot, and begged the employees to let him hide somewhere inside. The employees confirm that a frightened man had rushed in, asking them to protect him from someone outside holding a rock and making violent threats. Their statements back up what the victim claims to have heard: talk of killing, talk of settling scores, talk of payback. The officer relayed this information to the suspect, but he pushes back, saying the witnesses are lying or mistaken. He insists the rock was just something he picked up, that his words were being twisted. Yet the total picture is hard to ignore: a previous fight involving his brother, an angry chase through the neighborhood, a weapon in hand, multiple people scared enough to call the police. In the end, the officers decide that his actions meet the threshold for arrest. They place him in handcuffs and take him away, emphasizing that if he believed his brother had been assaulted, the appropriate response was to report it and allow the system to handle it, not to escalate things on his own with a rock and threats that could easily have led to a serious assault or worse. Later in the shift, the same officer chooses to swing behind the business with a secluded back lot, a place he knows from experience tends to attract questionable activity. It is the kind of spot where people go not to be seen, dim lighting, minimal foot traffic, and a history of officers finding drugs, sex, or both inside parked cars. As he drives through the lot, his attention is drawn to a vehicle sitting alone. Its windows fogged from the inside. There is movement, the vague outline of bodies shifting. The officers approach and find, unsurprisingly, a couple in the middle of an intimate encounter in the front seat. The woman, later identified as Portia, is half-dressed and clearly startled by the sudden arrival of police. The man, Santiago, scrambles to pull up his clothes. The officers are not particularly shocked. They have seen it many times before. They direct both of them to step out of the car and begin a conversation to determine exactly what is happening. During their quick visual scan of the interior, they notice a glass pipe lying on the back seat, one that has the distinctive shape and design commonly used for smoking meth. The presence of this pipe shifts the tone, suggesting that this may be more than just two adults seeking privacy. When asked about the pipe, Portia becomes defensive and insistent. She says she doesn't use meth, that she only drinks. She offers a personal story instead. According to her, she is seeing Santiago, but her mother disapproves of their relationship because he is Mexican. So they meet in secluded places like this to avoid family conflict. The officers suspect the situation might involve prostitution given the location and the circumstances, but she denies that any money changed hands. Santiago is more calm and cooperative. He admits he knows what the pipe is commonly used for, but says it isn't his, and that he hasn't been using any drugs. The officers pick up the pipe and inspect it. There is no obvious residue, no visible signs of recent use. Without that building, a solid drug case becomes difficult. They weigh the pros and cons of making an arrest versus issuing a warning. In the end, they choose discretion. They scold the couple for using a public parking lot as a bedroom and for putting themselves in a situation where they are surrounded by the symbols of drug abuse, even if they insist they aren't using. They warn them that other officers might not be so lenient and that this kind of behavior in a place known for trouble is a quick way to land in jail. Then they send them on their way, leaving the lot a little quieter for the moment. The focus then shifts to the evolving phase of prostitution enforcement. Officers explain that the era of women visibly walking certain streets and waving down cars has been supplemented and in many places overtaken by the world of online ads. Now, would-be clients scroll through listings on their phones, text, or call numbers and arrange to meet escorts in hotel rooms rather than on corners. To respond, police have adapted setting up sting operations where undercover officers pose as clients and rent hotel rooms while colleagues monitor the hallways and parking lot. In one operation, a woman arrives at a hotel dressed in a way that doesn't call much attention to her, but carrying the quiet confidence of someone who has done this before. She meets an undercover officer posing as a client and discusses terms. Their conversation might sound like small talk at first, but gradually it narrows to money and specific services. Once the arrangement is clear that she will engage in sexual acts in exchange for a stated amount of cash, the law is satisfied. The officers waiting nearby rush into the room, identify themselves, secure her hands, and explain that she is under arrest. She doesn't scream or sob. Instead, she answers their questions with a calm that suggests she knew this was always a risk of the life she chose or was pushed into. Another sting targets an escort who presents as female but is biologically male, dressed in a vibrant red jacket and styled hair that blends seamlessly into the nightlife environment. For this case, two undercover officers, a man and a woman, pretend to be a couple interested in hiring a third person for a sexual encounter. They rehearse their backstory and preferences before the escort arrives, making sure their details are consistent. When the escort steps into the room, there is a brief moment when everyone sizes each other up. The escort cautiously asks whether they are police. They deny it and ease into casual conversation, circling slowly toward the real purpose of the meeting. As the discussion turns more explicit, the topic of payment comes into focus. They talk about what each person is comfortable with, then agree on a dollar amount for the escort to engage in sex with both of them. That agreement is the deciding point. The signal is given, the hotel door opens and officers pour in, turning the intimate setting into a crime scene in seconds. The escort is handcuffed and informed of the charges. In conversation later, the person reveals that they have traveled and worked in different cities, chasing opportunities and clients wherever online ads seem to bring the most responses, living a life that is both mobile and precarious. By the time the episode moves to Las Vegas, the viewer has already seen how prostitution now operates both in hidden hotel rooms and semi-hidden street corners. On the Strip, under the glow of endless casino lights and the constant buzz of slot machines spilling out of open doors, working girls thread themselves into the waves of tourists. Officers describe a particular area near a well-known intersection as a fairway, where sex workers and clients find each other night after night. It is here that they notice two young women with matching large cocktails, standing together scanning the faces of passing men. When approached, the women identified themselves and revealed their ages. One is 22. The other is only 19, yet her clothing, makeup, and posture suggest she is already deeply entrenched in the trade. When asked how long she has been involved, she says 3 or 4 years in a tone that treats that fact as normal, even routine. The math shocks the conscience. If that is true, she was still a child when she started. As the officers probe further, the pieces of her story begin to fall into place. She talks about growing up in foster care, shuttled from one home to another without the stability or security most teenagers take for granted. She reveals that an early assault, a rape, was what pushed her into prostitution, an act of violence that became the twisted entry point into a world where sex and money are tangled. She now frames her work as a choice, driven by financial need and an addiction to the cash it brings. She insists she doesn't have a pimp, suggesting that she is in control of her own life. But her history makes it clear that control has often been taken from her. In her purse, officers find items that confirm what they already suspect: condoms, a small can of pepper spray. She says she has used multiple times lip gloss and small tools to maintain her appearance as she walks for hours under the neon and the desert night. The most immediate issue, however, is the drink in her hand. At 19, she is too young to legally possess alcohol, yet she is standing on a public sidewalk openly consuming it. The older friend nearby, holding the same kind of cocktail, denies having bought it for her, and the officers cannot prove otherwise. The conversation turns oddly philosophical at moments. The young woman insists she has only one life and intends to live it on her own terms, even if those terms include frequent run-ins with the law. Officers remind her that she has already been arrested for prostitution in other places, and that underage drinking is just another layer of risk. They tell her that the path she is on leads toward jail violence or worse. She shrugs off some of their warnings, saying she will probably quit in a few years, but not now. Her words reveal a mixture of bravado and fear, a teenager talking like an adult, because life has forced her to grow up too soon. Ultimately, they arrest her for being a minor in possession of alcohol, a comparatively minor charge, but one that at least gets her off the street for the night, and creates another record that social services might someday use to reach out. As they escort her away, the camera catches the contrast between her youth and the harsh glow of the strip behind her, where the party continues without pause. By the episode's end, the pattern of the night has become clear. Officers have moved from a violent domestic fight to the chaos of a loose zebra, from a revenge chase with a rock to a secretive backlot romance tinged with drugs from hotel rooms arranged online, to the cruel glitter of street prostitution under neon lights. At every step, they have had to shift gears from mediator to hunter, from animal wrangler to social worker, from enforcer of laws to reluctant witness of human tragedy. There are moments of absurdity, like a zebra swimming in a backyard pool, and moments of quiet heartbreak, like a 19-year-old who talks casually about being raped into a life of selling sex. Through it all, the common thread is the same. This job demands that officers walk into the middle of other people's worst moments, make quick decisions with incomplete information, and somehow keep moving to the next call, knowing that the radio will never really fall silent.